No, well.
Okay, good evening. I think we're on, yeah.
Nobody here except for me and you, but okay.
You're joined together with the other Mishtatfim.
Baruch
Hashem. So we're coming close to Sukkot, and we always leave the dinim of Sukkah for the last minute. It's kedai that we should start learning some of the dinim. So I like to review the dinim, not so much inside, but I think we'll go through the dinim that are important in the Gela Maisa. First, I want to say there's a very interesting thing, that there are mitzvahs which we know that mitzvahs, there's a machlekes in Gemara whether mitzvahs tzrichis kavana or not. Do mitzvahs need to have kavana? Meaning we know one is supposed to have kavana when one does a mitzvah. However, what happens if one did not have kavana? Is he yoytze the mitzvah or is he not yoytze the mitzvah? Now, what type of kavana are we referring to here? It's a machlekes whether you need to have kavana that you're doing a mitzvah, not details and not special kavanas. Just you have to know that you're doing a mitzvah. Now, think I'm about to mekayim a mitzvah min haTorah now or not. Machlekes, the halacha is we take on that when it comes to a mitzvah min haTorah, mitzvah tzrichis kavana. If you do not have kavana, you have to do it again. Let's say you picked up a lulav, an esrig, and just to look at it, say, look how nice it is. Oh, look at a beautiful lulav, an esrig. Or you wanted to smell it, and you didn't have in mind the mitzvah. You're not yaitza. You have to do it again. Right? He has to have kavana for the mitzvah. Otherwise, he's not yaitza the mitzvah because kavana doing the yaitza mitzvah. However, we say when it comes to a mitzvah midrabanan, if one did not have kavana, you're yaitza. Meaning, obviously, l'chatchila you should have kavana. But if you did not have kavana, you're yaitza the mitzvah. That comes up a lot also by Sfiras Oimer, like if you said to someone, oh, tonight is this and this Sfira, so even though you didn't have kavana to do the mitzvah, but Sfira does not as midrabanan. Mitzvah ain't tzrichas kavana midrabanan. Right? And then you also have a shash tafel bracha. However, there's another type of kavana. There's a separate kavana. A kavana, why am I doing this mitzvah? What's the reason behind it? Not that I am doing a mitzvah. There's another type of kavana, is why am I doing this mitzvah? We put on tefillin as a zeicher for Yitzias Mitzrayim. We do this mitzvah for this reason. It's the kavana, the reasons behind the mitzvah. So, by this kavana is not ma'akiv in all mitzvahs. You don't have to know why you're doing it. You have to know you're doing a mitzvah. You don't have to know why, the reason. However, interesting that we find by a few mitzvahs that there is an inyan to know why you're doing it. You're supposed to have kavanah. One of them is sukkos. It says, "Basukkos teisha shivas yam." You should sit in sukkah 7 days. Tafresh chafei. Laman yedu de'echem. You should, you should know for future generations that I placed you in Sukkot when I took you out of Mitzrayim. And that Sukkot is the Anane HaKavod. The Ananim HaKavod that Hashem surrounded the Klal Yisrael to save them from the rain and from the sun. And a person needs to have Kavanah that it's Zeichet Yitzias Mitzrayim, that when we left, Hashem put us in the HaKavod. You sit in the Sukkah, you're not supposed to say, oh, I'm doing a mitzvah. To think I'm doing a mitzvah zeicher to the Anani HaKavod. Now, even this, if you didn't have this in mind, you're also yoytze b'diavad. But the chatchila, one should not only have in mind that I'm doing a mitzvah, you should try to remember, especially the first night, that you're doing this for the mitzvah of remembering what happened when you left Mitzrayim. Now it's a mitzvah to misak in the sukkah and to build it right after the day after Yom Kippur. Right, the night, actually that night, mitzvah Yom Kippur, when you leave shul, because a mitzvah habaliyotcha altach mitzena, you have a chance to do a mitzvah, do it. The Rebbe one time spoke that we found that many Gedali so did not build a sukkah mitzvah Yom Kippur, and the Rebbe said we're yoytze, we're just talking about it. So we talk about the fact that we make our plans. We talk, oh, I need to build it tomorrow. I need to take care of it this week. That with that you're yoytze the inyan of building it mitzvah Yom Kippur. Now, I want us to be careful not to build a sukkah under the trees. If one does have some trees on top of the schach, he has to make sure that most of the sail, most of the shade is coming from the schach and not from the tree branches. That's something one needs to be cautious about. Well, it's on the little side, it's not an issue. Yeah. It was on the top also. It was on the sides. Right? Sail. It was a sail. You know, it says in a medrash that Gemara, I think, says that we were zoiche to the mitzvah sukkah from Avram Avinu fed the malachim. The malachim came to him and he fed them underneath a tree, underneath the shade of a tree. It says, "V'hu oimid tachas ha'etz, v'yechelon ve'et." The question is, eating under a tree is possible schach. It's not good schach. It has to be cut, not attached to the ground. And we have a sukkah. It's different. How can we learn out our sukkah or Ravina's sukkah? So the Rebbe explains that in his notes that he wrote before he was Rebbe, that when the times of the Avis, when they did a mitzvah, they couldn't go higher than a person could reach humanly, based on humanistic abilities. Based on their abilities, they could only reach a certain amount. They were only able to mamshech kedusha into the world as much as the koyach of a nivra can. After Matan Torah, the Yidden were given a koyach to mamshech kedusha like the Bayrei is able to do. It was a whole different level. When a tree is attached to the ground, it only can go lefi erech, that it's attached to the ground, it's still connected to the ground. It's not able to go away from where it is. So in the times of the Avis, that was the inyan of Sukkah. Sheinkin after Matan Torah, it's cut off from the ground because it's able to reach higher than the ground and above the ground. But Kapanim, that's a parenthetical note. No, it was a remez. It was a remez. From here we were zoiche. From this thing that he did, we were zoiche to this mitzvah. But from this act that he did, assuming it's not a sukkah, it wasn't a kasha, a sukkah, it was under a tree. It's a schus. You have to medrashim. It says the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, Roiv Sadot HaTorah Genuzimba. You read medrashim. A lot of them are very hard to understand what the medrash is trying. There's a lot of secrets and deeper meaning behind the medrashim. Correct. Right? Yeah, things they did the mitzvot, but it wasn't the way exactly where we did. They didn't have tefillin. It says in Zohar that the tefillin, what Yaakov did, tefillin through the sticks that he set up for the animals. That was the way how and that's how he was able to draw down the kedusha that we draw down to tefillin. He drew it down that way. Now, some people like to make a shlak for the sukkah to cover for the rain. You make it properly, that it has like if you make it with hinges and things like that, and it's something. It's like a regular door, just like you're able to close the door on Yom Tif and Shabbos. You can close it and pick it back up. There's no problem. It's not considered building or construction. But however, you have to make sure that you don't sit under it while it rains, because then it's a problem. It's not kosher to sukkah. A person's allowed to build a sukkah on top of a wagon, a movable. People have like a sukkah mobile. That's kosher, as long as it's able to stand in a ruach mitsuya of the yabasha, meaning on dry land, a normal wind blows in that area on the land. If it could stand for that wind, then you could build it there. If not, it's not considered a kosher sukkah. The walls have to be, unless they have the walls of the truck are estimate. Huh? Could be anything. Walls can be made out of anything, but the walls need to be oimid beruach mitzuya. Sometimes canvases can be an issue. The Shulchan Aruch says if you're going to use canvases, you need to make sure they're tied down tight. They don't blow with the wind. Sometimes you go by the sukkahs and it's like a balloon blowing away, which is problematic. So now they have made by different sukkahs, people put in, they call them machmirim straps, or I'm not sure different names. Machmirim straps, that's what someone told me they're called. The mahadrim straps. I don't think the mahadrim machmirim actually should be called halacha straps. Your sukkah is not really kosher if it's blowing around like that. You need to have it tied down. And if you're not able to tie down the canvas, then you have these straps, which hopefully these straps themselves are not blowing with the wind. So they should be tight. Because if they themselves blow with the wind, you have the same problem. So if you have these straps within 3 tefachim of each other, at the height of 10 tefachim, which is every tefach is about, let's talk about 9.5 inches is 3 tefachim. What do you want to say something? Uh-huh.
It helped whatever.
Right. I don't know how they make the pop-up sukkah today, but originally when it came out, I was very disturbed when I saw it, because the whole entire sukkah didn't seem to me was Oymed Beruach Mitzuya. But maybe now if you tie down each wall, and even if you tie down, let's say the sukkah, you had sometimes they have the strap, you tie it to a pole. Sometimes the sukkah, while it's tied to the pole with the wind, will just flap around. It's also problematic. So you need to make sure the walls are stationary. So it blows a bit, it's okay, but even a wood wall can blow a little bit, but a light piece of wood, However, if it's blowing more than 9 inches, it could be an issue. It means probably more than 9 tefachim with the wind, you're getting into a problem. So it should be tied down as strong as you could. long as it's tied down, it's not going Baruch Mitzuya. Oh, carton. Oh. By the way, a lot of times people are building these on porches, and you can use the porch walls. So if the porch walls are usually 10 tefachim high, it's usually not an issue. It's just you should make sure the schach reaches over until the walls of the porch, and you're not using the canvas actually. The canvas is just there to give you privacy or give you a little more protection from the wind. But halachically, you're using the walls of that are now Teif and Akuma only works when you have something there. Let's say you put up the schach, but the schach is far away from those walls. The schach has to be over the wall. How is this wall considered part of the sukkah if I have schach here and this is here? There's no connection. Teif and Akuma doesn't work in space. It only works when you have, let's say, pasal schach here, next to the wall, and then there's kasher schach. So we'll say it's kil doif and akuma, and it reaches up until, right. Space is a problem. So you would have to pull the schach and make sure you have 3 walls. The schach is over, not only over your canvas sukkah, but it goes a little bit over towards over your gates, at least 3 of the gates. So you have 3 of the gates. A lot of people don't know this, and that's something to be, if their canvas is a problem. Even if some people are building in between, let's say in their backyard, they have like a garage and they have gates like with your neighbor, and they just put up some beams of wood and put schach on it. They're not careful sometimes to make sure that the schach reaches the walls. That could be an issue, because if the schach doesn't reach the wall, yeah, maybe 3 tefachim. If the schach does not reach within 3 tefachim, meaning 9.5 inches, a little bit less than 9.5 inches from the wall, then that wall is not part of your sukkah. So you have to make sure you have 3 walls and schach on it. Very nice. You have I have a wall here, but the wall is 10 feet away from my schach. There's no connection. So I need to connect the schach and the walls. So I one time was invited out to eat somewhere, and I came there, looked around, and I was very distraught to see what So after I felt really uncomfortable. Like if I want to go somewhere, I used to try to see if I could find out what type of sukkah and is being built there, just to make sure that. And some people, they're very erlich and they mean very well, but they might not know all the dinim and might forget a din. So no one means any harm, but it's important to just make sure one knows. Basically, that's what we're doing tonight, just to get the basic halachas. It could go tilted as long as, yeah.
I was in a room, the walls were part of the house. And I had, only 1 floor, so the schach was above it.
So there you say Deif and Akuma. Right. Here, and even though not reaching the wall, but since there was roof there till the wall, so I think it works up to Dalet Amis. Up to Dalet Amis, meaning let's say 6 feet next to the wall. From the wall, they could have the kosher schach. But there, it's not empty space. It's a roof. So the roof is better. It's like the wall extends. Let's say we open up right here. You open, well, here you have the vibration here, but if you open up to the roof here, if you this is directly to the sky, you'd open up a skylight here and you put schach on it. So you'd have a problem because you need to have walls underneath the schach. So if the walls are within, I think it's Dalet Amis, they have to be within the connected to the schach. I mean, that wall there is not part of the sukkah. It's a nice wall, it looks good, but there's no connection to the schach. Maybe the wall here could be connected, and you'd have to make sure you have walls. So not always opening up in your apartment in your house is always going to be the best thing. You have to see if you're doing it in a proper place. Right. So those, they usually do like a whole room or something, usually. the schach or it's not a problem. The concept is that you look at the wall. If you have pasul schach, like a roof, and then it's schach. So the schach itself, the kasha schach, don't reach the wall. We look as if the wall extends. It's akum. It extends and it goes till the schach. That's okay up until dalat amis. But there's more than dalat amis of pasul schach, of roof, up until your schach, and your schach does not connect to the wall. We don't say deifin akum. But deifin akum is only said when there is a roof there. There's something pasul schach. But if it's empty, it's air, like when you make a sukkah outside, and the schach, you put your schach on your sukkah, and you're not careful that the schach should reach the walls, what's going to be there? It's going to be empty space. There's not going to be any roof there, anything. It's empty space. Schach is put on top of the sukkah, and then there's space. You have here your sukkah. You put your schach, but you put it over here. It's not touching. It's empty. It's not like over here where you'd have roof up until where you put the schach. So the empty space is a problem if it's more than 3 tefachim. You're supposed to make sure to pull the schach that it should be optimally actually on top of it. To make sure that yeah. But you need the walls. You need to have, if you have 3 other walls, meaning what happens if 2 of your 4 walls are like this? The schach is removed from it. It's just you have some space. So you didn't have a long schach, such a long schach, or you weren't careful to pull it all the way. So the schach was removed from the wall. This wall is not part of the sukkah. You need to have at least 3 walls in the sukkah. So if you have 2 of your walls like that, with space like this, it's a pasul sukkah. Because your walls and your schach are not connected. There's walls and there's no schach. The schach is over here. The wall is here. You need to make sure that your schach goes over your wall or right next to it. So as long as you don't have, you have 3 walls without it, it's not a problem. Otherwise, you're losing this wall. It's a problem for the men too if there's 2 walls like this. Right, so that's not a problem. The halach is only 3 walls in a sukkah. The minig is to try to make 4 walls. Meaning a 4th wall could be with a door in it, but the 4th wall. If you don't have 3 walls, also kosher. 100%. That's right. You don't need to have even 3 complete walls. The Alter Rebbe says in the Likutei Torah that the walls surrounding us is the hug of Hashem. This is Hashem's arm around. The arm doesn't necessarily go all around the body. It goes partly around that. The arm is the hug of halacha, which I think many are necessarily, and many times they do it, it's anyways okay, but they're necessarily cautious about this to make sure that you have your schach over your walls. At least 3 of your walls should be over, schach should be over the walls. A mat? Bamboo is better, but not everyone could have the bamboos sitting around the house, and they're expensive, I think. It used to be everyone used the bamboos. In Chabad, they have in the greens. They try to use the green, only greens, only the greens. But no, it seemed like that was a minig. All the old Lubavitchers from Amol, that's the way they did it. They used this type. It could be either it's something because that's the way they saw it. Let's say, and they didn't have bamboos. It's from China or something, right? It's not from here. It's kosher, but it's not something they saw. But it could be someone told me, a Rav one time told me that in Zohar says that schach, pi Kabbalah, not out of Zohar, but pi Kabbalah, this is a lashon, schach is green. So this is green, maybe it's pi Kabbalah. He doesn't know, but he said maybe. The old question. Chabad doesn't have a talus with a nice Torah. It's the same thing. And they don't have a nice big silver box for the esrog. It's the same idea that they don't want to focus on something else besides for the mitzvah. Meaning they. But the problem is you won't be allowed into show without a nice box. Someone already showed me that today you could already buy an esrog online. You could order an esrog online, and they give you a 3D look of the esrog online. You could see. You can move the esrog around online and see all the sides. So you get to choose your esrog online. No complaints afterwards. If it comes in the mail, it might not look the same way. You can't return it after Sukkot. I don't know. Could you blow it up? Could you blow up each section and look at it? But it's all kosher, schach, whatever you use. The reason why mats, some people feel it's more mahudr to use it. No, not because of that, but because the strings they're using. Another issue, that's also an koda, but I think what a bigger issue is that mats are made tied together with string. This string is not kosher for schach. You can't make schach out of string, right? So what's the problem? This is called maimid. There's a halacha that l'chatchila, you're not allowed to build your sukkah. You're not allowed to be maimid the schach. You're not allowed to put the schach, lean the schach on something. The items which hold up the schach cannot be things which are possible for schach. It's called a maimid. You have to have a kosher maimid. The reason for this is because a person, anything that comes directly in contact with schach, we want to be kosher schach. Because a person might think, if I could put it up there, maybe that could actually be the schach. So therefore, there's a gzeira not to use any maimid which is not kosher for schach. Therefore, the mashal, we don't put metal beams, metal poles to hold up our schach. For this reason, because it's considered a maimid. However, it doesn't make a difference what's underneath that. Let's say I put wood beams, but underneath the wood beams, they're on top of my sukkah. My sukkah is metal and it's not kosher. Or it's made out of stone walls, which cannot kosher. That's not a problem. It's called maimid dimaimid. Maimid dimaimid is not a problem if it's possible schach. The main thing is the direct thing which holds up the schach. That maimid should be kosher for schach. The Chazon Ish had a unique shita, which the Chazon Ish held. The even maimid dimaimid has to be kosher for schach. So it became a big problem because it means, let's say you can't have anything in your sukkah. It's possible. Anything in your walls of your sukkah, from the schach till the ground, can be anything in that's possible for schach because the maimid of the schach is being held up by something possible. It means you can't have metal walls, you can't have stone walls, so you have to use wood walls. You can't have, You cannot have nails, metal nails in your sukkah. So they have it. They say in Yerushalayim that in Bnei Brak, the sukkahs that are fallen down are the Chazon Ish sukkahs. You see, they have to figure out with tachbulis how to keep their sukkah standing. So what I heard is what they do is they basically make it like a fit-in puzzle with wood. They basically make, the wood pieces they cut out that they should fit into each other. Stick them in with a hole and stick in zachar and a keva. And they do this also all over to hold back the sukkah. So the Maisa, the Alter Rebbe, the Mishabura, all Paiskim do not agree with this, and they hold that you're allowed to put the ground is also not kosher. The earth is also not kosher for schach. You're allowed to put it on. You're allowed to put on anything. Even the only problem is that what's directly under the schach has to be kosher. Everything else, you can have a wall made out of metal, no problem. So what's directly underneath the schach has to be holding it up. So therefore, there were those that had a problem, some issues with the mats, because the mats are tied together with strings that make them a roll, which these strings are not something that you could use to put on top of to use a schach. So now you're being minded your schach with something which is possible. However, others said, no, that's not an issue because that's all, the schach itself would not fly away, even without these strings holding it down, it would stay there. It's in order to make it as a mat, it's helpful to roll it, to store it, to roll it out. It's just for comfortability. But the schach would be able to stay on top of your sukkah without these strings, therefore it's not a maimed. And that's where the heter came to use the mats. There are some that use strings which are not the strings really. Some of them they make not from synthetic material, comes from plants, right? From they have ones that come from different. You could see some of them come with ones that are natural strings, and they don't do work on it, and they use it. And by the way, those mats don't last as long because they're not. They eventually fall apart within 2-3 years. It's going to fall apart. But they have some of them that have it. Anyways, whatever you do, buy one that has a good, reliable hashkach on it, and they're going to take care of that issue, making sure that it's not considered a minor. You have plenty of shadim, you can have the the charedis, whatever it is you on your mats, if you're using a mat. Bamboos. It's not such a, what everyone did years ago here in America was the bamboos became difficult to store and the bamboos last forever. The single ones, single ones. Yeah, so every year you got to get new pine, I said before, I don't know the reason. The Heller one time told me he thinks it's maybe Api Kabbalah because schach are called Yerukim and Kabbalah maybe it has to be green. Not sure. It could also be that's just traditionally what they saw in Russia was they didn't have pines, The Rebbe's sukkahs were always only was the pines. Branches they put a lot of little branches. You actually have to put a lot more wood beams to hold it up. Yeah. No, they would fall down. Yeah. So I actually put a mat and then I put it on top. But I don't. It's hard to maneuver. You have to put a lot of beams in order to do it. The sun you don't have to see when you're in the sukkah, but you have to be able to see the stars. So what you do is the Alter Rebbe had it in the Alter Rebbe. We have a Kabbalah from the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told the person putting on the schach, more and more, put more and more schach. What's going to be with you're supposed to see the chav? Alter Rebbe would take a little stick and make a little hole that he should be able to see the. No, kaidim. But there was an Indian to have a riboy schach. Exactly. A few years ago, someone tried to invent a rainproof sukkah. The Rabbanim were not too happy with that. He came with some invention where it was actually interesting. He was all made out of natural materials, right? He made where he had, let's say, each piece led into another piece so that the rain wouldn't seep through. It was like a puzzle, sort of like you had, let's say, half a bamboo, and it would lead on half the bamboo was turned upside down, and on the bottom of it was another 2 pieces of bamboo upwards. And he went like that in the whole entire schach. And basically, he made it wasn't attached, and it was somehow attached together. I'm not sure how he attached it. Whatever it was, but the pile, it's a problem. The rain has to be able to get through. Eventually, it has to be able to come through. So you could put a lot of schach on, but eventually it has to be able to come through the rain. If it can't come through, it's a house. It's called a house. It has to be a sukkah, has to be made just for sale and not to be a house.
You make a place of a sukkah if it rains? You're sitting in sukkah in the rain.
It depends who you ask. Depends who you ask. The Chassidim do make. Those that sit in the sukkah and rains make.
The Babich does make, in other words.
They do make when it rains, yeah. I always heard from Rabbi Yoel Khan that he always remembered how in the sukkah, when the Rebbe used to fabring in the sukkah, in the earlier years, the Rebbe would fabring in the sukkah actually. Later on, it was too much pushing and shoving. People were getting hurt. The Rebbe stopped. But he said that he remembered how there was pouring rain, and the Rebbe came in and he made dafka aleish b'sukkah b'koil ram hoich to let everyone know. He's making with a This is the old shaila. The Minchas Elazar talks about it, and a lot of tshuvas that it says in Shulchan Aruch, and the Gemara says that whoever's potter from it's a sukkah, they could hedyot. Yeah, hedyot, yeah. But the Baal Shem Tov and the Talmidim were makbid to sit in the sukkah even when it rained. They said that hedyot, but I'm not leaving the Eibishter, I'm not leaving the sukkah. The Gemara says the mashal is if it rains, it's a bad siman. Because if it rains, it's like a servant comes to serve his master a drink of wine. The master pours the drink of wine in his face. I don't want you, I don't want your service, I don't like you. So you come into your sukkah trying to serve Hashem, and Hashem pours on you rain. The Chassidim said, yeah, Hashem is sad, but I'm still not going to go away from Hashem. I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to let him chase me out. I'm not running away. He's saying is that it's not in a klala. Here, okay. B'chlal, it says Gshamim Siman Klala B'chag. We wait until to say Mashor Meragesh until Shmini Atzeres, because we're dafka waiting until Sukkot is over. Even though we're not even asking, we're saying Talamata is much later. Just being maskir Mashor Meragesh, we wait because it's Siman Klala B'chag. Yeah. Aga, by the way, the whole Sukkot is really the Pashtos is about asking for rain. We're starting to get ready to where we pour Nisach HaMayim, and we bring the Dalam Minim, saying Hashem, look, these plants need rain. There's an inyan of that we need Mayim. This is the Ichag. We're done. The Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah that we're needing a Mayim on how much Mayim we're going to have for the year. In Sukkot, but we don't want the actual rain to come on Sukkot. It should come the day after, not on Sukkot itself. Huh? You mean Shmini Atzeres, yeah. Right. That's a chag, yeah. And the Shana Rabbah, we're doing all the Hashanis. What do we say when we say Hashanis? It's all about Mayim. Asking Allah Salah Hachach. It's all about the inyan of Mayim. That we're asking Hashem beseeching for water. Yeah. Yeah. Chabad eats the whole meal sukkah, Shmini Atzeres and sukkah. Some make just kiddush, right? Make just kiddush. And some don't eat the chlal in the sukkah, Shmini Atzeres. I remember the Pamal Shalom. I remember him having the sukkah. He would make it inside the house. He would make the last day a Sudar of Pam. He would make it in his house on Shmini Atzeres. Would make a Sudar, Zegim von Sukkis. It's in the house. And he would always make sure to call my parents live next door, send his grandchild over to call them over. I remember he gave my father to drink some wine to say l'chaim. He wanted to give him, so my father said doesn't drink wine out of the sukkah. Okay, so he understood that there's such a minute. So he wanted to give him alcohol, that's shahako. He didn't want to drink that. He said, "If you das shminat seres," oh, he didn't realize that Ramachma could take half. Okay. Yeah, Chabad they're very machmer. It's all the extremes. They're very machmer not to drink even mayim out of the sukkah, even shminat seres, and six and gshamim also not to leave the sukkah even when it rains. By the way, interesting. When it came to them. By the way, a whole sukkah, it says, Kol hamarbe, that whoever, entire sukkahs, hapi halacha, I hope maybe next week we'll talk about these halachas. Mirz Hashem will have a shir before Yom Kippur. We get to talk about and also after Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is Monday, so we will have Sem Gedaya, I don't know if there's going to be a shir. I'm not saying that it's probably not going to be a shir. So I'm not sure if we'll have a shir. But Maisa, Shulchan Aruch says that there are certain things that you don't have to eat everything in the sukkah pi halacha. It's clear. It's not a lot of dinner. You can even have mezainis out of the sukkah up to a certain shir, makabeya. However, it says that whoever eats everything in as much as they could in the sukkah, areza meshubach afilu mayim. Afilu mayim, it's areza meshubach. Not a chiyuv, areza meshubach. Back to sukkahs. Back to the mitzvah sukkah. Yeah.
And then he said, I can't. Why? Because they had a game, basketball, and I have to see it. So I thought my ability, I get motivated. I'm enjoying your wife and 3 kids and the game. And they wash a motzi and I didn't do that in the car. And he has a time.
He couldn't stop from watching the ball moving around, huh? He took away the excuse. That was a good cop. Now, by the way, when it comes to Maimid, one does not have to be careful that the schach shouldn't touch metal at all. Let's say people have always a shy. Let's say that sometimes the frame is made out of metal, plastic, and the frame's made out of metal, and the schach is touching it, and the edges. It's not a problem as long as those main thing is the beams that are actually holding it up. The Maimid means the material which is actually holding it up for not falling down. The fact that it's touching a metal nail or it's sitting on and the edges are touching some metal is not an issue. As well, another thing, some people are worried that the schach might fly off or fall down. Right. There was a lot of sukkahs fell. A lot of sukkahs fell down. Yeah. Sukkahs and fellas. There. Chicago's very windy. So Mamai says some people are nervous, so they want to tie down the schach. So as long as the schach itself is oimid beruach mutzuya on its own, the schach is not going to fly off on a normal wind. That year wasn't normal winds, right? If you know a normal wind, regular gusts of wind, even when it's a windy day, but it's considered a normal windy wind, it's oimid beruach mutzuya, then you could tie it down because it's not being held on really by the strings. That's only when there's a ruach she'enim mitzuya. But when there's a common wind, it won't fall off anyway, so it's not being maimed. So as long underneath it you have regular wood beams, and then you want to tie it with a string, you could tie it to hold it down, and it shouldn't fly away. If you want to be mahader, you could put a piece of a board, a thin piece of wood or something in between, so you don't have you're not directly touching tying down the schach, you have something in between the string and the act the schach. Could, right, yeah. I think Meikar then it's not an issue to tie it down directly, but you could do that. A person's not supposed to build a sukkah. First of all, there's two problems. Building a sukkah on public property or on the street, there's two problems with it. Number one, if it's a spot where you're not allowed to legally build a sukkah, it's a problem. It's a sukkah gezula. So you're not allowed the chatchila to make a sukkah there because the sukkah needs tasalacha. It should be your sukkah. If you're making the sukkah on property which it's illegal to build it there and they don't let you. So if the rules are that, yeah, it's okay temporary to make a temporary structure in front of your house, in front of your store, it's okay to do it, the city allows it, it's fine. But if you know that it's not allowed and people are annoyed by it, they don't want it there, you should not do it. And however, if you did it, it is a kosher sukkah, you should not make a bracha on it. Another issue is you're not supposed to build a sukkah in a place where you're afraid to sleep there. If it's a sukkah which is like on the street and you're afraid to sleep there, so if you're not afraid, okay, you're not afraid, you're a tough guy. But if you're afraid to sleep there, even to eat there's a problem. Even though during the day to eat there you're not worried, but at night you're worried to sleep there, it's a problem because your sukkah has to be ready to eat and sleep in. And even if you're a Chabadnik and you're not sleeping in the sukkah or whatever, for other reason you're not sleeping in the sukkah, you still has to be kosher really to sleep in. So you have to be in a place where you're comfortable sleeping. If it's all the way on the street and you're scared to sleep there at night, are you scared or you just won't sleep there because it's you'd rather sleep in your house? But if you're, I guess they're tough and they're not scared. I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. You should definitely try to. There was no way about it. Right. Yeah. And one more thing, leave off. He had another sukkah even by 770. He had another small. Right. He had another sukkah also later years. They built for there was another sukkah for the Rebbe, a small sukkah where the Rebbe would be able to leave his room privately, go to that sukkah, so people wouldn't know that he was. He would sometimes use that sukkah, but he would have to go there. He'd have to go out, and people would be as private. And he had another small sukkah just if he wanted to go and learn. Yeah. The later years, the Rebbe stayed in some 70s, after the Rebbetzin was nifter. So he had a smaller sukkah that was near. Now, but again, the Indian of sleeping in the sukkah, we find that some sleep in the sukkah, some don't sleep in the sukkah. What's it based on? So the minig is quoted Amon Shulchan Aruch and Alter Rebbe Shulchan Mishmur does not people did not sleep in sukkah. Mitzvahs did sleep in sukkah. Medaktik in mitzvahs. But Hamoin Am did not sleep in sukkah. Various reasons given. The main thing it says is because it was cold, it was uncomfortable, and if you need to go to the sukkah and bring your blankets down, and you don't have enough space to eat, and the next morning you have to remove your blankets, you're potter from sleeping in the sukkah. So, if you don't have enough room in your sukkah for your mattress and your table, so then you don't have to sleep in the sukkah. Pidin. Right? Because you wouldn't do that in your house if you move your But you have to have enough room for your table, right? But what happens if you don't have enough room to have your sleeping mattress? Another reason also brought down is because even in places where it's not cold, Taz says that husband and wife, the wife is potter in the sukkah and she does not want to sleep in the sukkah, and is a simchas yomtiv. And even if she is not tahor, it's still an inyan that the husband should be with her and near her, and she should have a simchas yomtiv that she's sleeping by herself in the house. There's also another svara that, and therefore he would also be potter in such a case. So Maisa, that was the minig, and certain medactic mitzvahs were machmer. Lately, the last years, so Chabad, there was various minhagim. There were many Hasidim that did sleep in the sukkah. There were many Hasidim that did sleep in the sukkah. We know that Itcha the Masmid, the famous Chassid, did not leave the sukkah, an entire sukkahs. I don't know what the Mavar Mayar did in Europe. Maybe it's in Febrengs. Yeah, a lot of the Grace Chassidim tried not to sleep. They tried to. They didn't leave the sukkah. But Lamaisa, the Rebbe always brought down that the minig was from the Mittler Rebbe, son of the Alter Rebbe, not to sleep in the sukkah. And the Chiddush was not a heter. The heter was basic because the minig of Hamayna wasn't to sleep. The shaila was why he wasn't from the Medaktikim. The Mittler Rebbe said that al pi Kabbalah there's mayor a lot of oiris in the sukkah, and a yois when you sleep in the sukkah, you're not able to control yourself necessarily the way you behave. And to act in the best, most covered. So it's had the grace Hamshach in the sukkah, not to sleep in the sukkah. So it wasn't here to come as that's a heter. The heter was that there was an old minig not to sleep in the sukkah. It was just that this was to explain why we weren't from the medaktik in the mitzvahs. It's at that inyan. So therefore, in Chabad, and it also used to be bells. The older bells of Chassidim were also the not sleep in the sukkah. But now, but there ain't no people, a lot of people, especially in Eretz Yisrael, in places that a lot of people feel it became a very big thing to sleep in the sukkah. It changed the oilam, and it's a nice thing in Chumrah for those who have it. But but you can't come. It's like a lot of things. People are very makbid and chadash, and it's a lot of nice things. But you can't go to other people that's still keeping the old minig and krimet the naz, like you say. Look, who are you? You don't sleep in the sukkah. You don't eat. These are things that the Babas and the Zaydas didn't do, and they hundreds of years people didn't do these things. People have now an ability in America, times of Rechava, the Machmer, very nice, but not to come and say that I'm better than you and I'm the real Chassid, I'm the real Yerushalayim, and to look down on other people. If we have a Doyer of Machmirim, people are trying the Hatzalah is like, now people are trying to have that the Goyim should be taking that Hatzalah cars back and driving them. In a lot of places, making it for 50 years, everyone was relying on it. Ramesh's Heter. I don't know if that's beside the Chumras that the women are making. Anyways, for all our listeners. I don't know if that's from for doing this for halacha reasons. I think they just don't.